Alrighty, folks, One Rental at a Time is a different channel because of the millionaires and experts we bring on the channel because we can talk about lots and lots of stuff. And here we have the CEO of Himlane. We're going to talk about real estate investing, more specifically, how far outside the city is okay and how far is just too far. Dana, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, Dana, it is wonderful to have you each week. You have a unique purview over the investing landscape. You work with thousands, if not tens of thousands, individual investors. You provide a great service, but you also can kind of look inside the data and understand, who is having success investing in a city, and who may be going outside the city. So, why don't you kind of set this up, and we'll go back and forth.
Yeah, so to give some background on it, institutional investors very much invest in MSAs. So these metropolitan areas, large population, guaranteed to always be over 100,000. And so the question is, when you're a small mom and pop and you're just getting started, the question is, how far outside of the city should you go? Should you do an MSA and kind of stay in those same restrictions that institutional investors, like their models don't even allow them to go outside of cities?
Yeah.
Or do you say, hey, there is a town that's an hour and a half outside of, wherever it may be, a big place like Los Angeles, California, a big city in California, or maybe a big city in Texas like Austin. And the question is, how far is too far outside of the city? And should you be investing in those areas? Kind of as a rule of thumb here that we've seen at Hemlane is if the population is over 100,000, we are able to get really, really strong service professionals. And so what I mean by that is a handyman, a general contractor, HVAC. And what we have found, and it's not a set rule, but the second that you go under that, suddenly it gets more difficult to find good talent. And we have had towns of populations of like 6,000 where it's like there's one handyman in the entire city or the entire town, and you're not quite sure they're qualified. And so it does make it slightly more difficult, especially when you're looking to increase your operating income and make sure that, hey, I have good quality service professionals, work is done correctly, professionally, et cetera. And so I want to kick it off there. And Michael, you obviously have so much experience and you've invested in two different locations, one that is under 100,000 and one that's over 100,000. What have you seen?
So first off, it's very interesting because you're so right. Given the service that Himlane provides and that layer, that go between for investors, right? One of your strengths is setting up that relationship with the providers, right? So again, you go to a big MSA, 100,000 plus, you're probably building 3 or 4 deep, so you have optionality. You go to a small town, 25,000, you may find the best of the best, but you get one. It doesn't give you optionality. And I hadn't thought of that. So I definitely can see how size matters, if you will. So kind of my story. So for a long time, probably the better part of 10, maybe 11 years, we stayed in Fresno proper. And if people know my story, I even stayed in one zip code for over 3 years. So very focused, right? Definitely a buy box on steroids. And what I started doing is I started networking more, right? The first 5 years, I lived in my Excel spreadsheet. I knew 93703 really, really well, but that's all I knew. As I started opening up, realizing this is a people business, I started networking and building out my team. And what I quickly found out is my team was comfortable going to a city. Yeah, I guess it's still a city, kind of 30 minutes, what it would be north for them. But they weren't comfortable going an hour south, right? Heading from Fresno down to LA. And to put words on this, Madera, California was a market they were very comfortable going. So what that meant for me is I could use my team from my local MSA to go out just a little farther. And why was that good for me as a real estate investor? Less competition, right? Because the big institution, the big investors, they have, like you say, big rules, right? We will not leave Fresno. Well, Madera is not Fresno, but my team is telling me they'll go there. And, I picked up 3 duplexes in very short order that are probably some of the best things I own. And I look there almost every day. So it definitely works. And then I went the other direction to is a city called Hanford. I think it's about 45, really an hour away. And my team's telling me, Mike, we'll do it for you, but we hate it. And what really, I tried it once and it was like, yeah, we'll do it, but we'll create any excuse not to. Right. Oh, I had to do this other thing. So I can't be on the road because again, it's an hour there, an hour back. They go to the Home Depot, like the local Home Depot doesn't have what they need. It's just a big mess. So definitely some towns too small, too far. But others are like, no, it's just, the outer ring. So it's okay. So yeah, it's a fun topic.
Yeah, definitely. Now, did your team charge you more when were going up to Madeira? Because it's a 30-minute drive so farther for them.
No, I mean, they definitely, I mean, if I were becoming as a new investor, it would probably be in time and material. They would include that. But thankfully, given my history, they don't. That's just, it's, included. Or,
Yeah. I think also the devil's in the details too of the where you're going. And for example, you really need to make sure that if you are going outside of an MSA, that you really understand what industry they are in. Maybe just because it's a hot market, because it's like an oil town. One industry, not that stable, something could
yeah.
change overnight. And so what you do have to understand is, well, is there population growth? Maybe it's at 50,000, but it will be at 100,000, give it, 5 to 10 years. Is it where from the perspective of industries, it has multiple industries and new industries are going to there, like there's a new Amazon, warehouse coming into there. So looking at that, I also think is incredibly important. And then the other thing that I found is if it's between two MSAs, that can be incredibly valuable. So if it's like
Sure.
between, Tampa and Orlando or something like that, there's the people are driving to and from each one and driving right through. And so I always think the devil's in the details as well of really understanding that and making a case. So that's obviously the first point of like, do the research and have some sort of macro and micro hypothesis of what is going to happen to this city and to the neighborhoods in the city within the next 5 to 10 years. And then the other thing I would say that I don't know how much changes it is self-driving cars. Because suddenly when you have that where people live, if it's an hour outside or even 30 minutes outside of Fresno, but you're no longer having to drive and you have some sort of experience, that could be a game changer as well. And so there's a couple of things I think that will impact the real estate industry that are a little bit outside of our control from that perspective. But I would say, it's not just having that cutoff of like, hey, under 100,000 doesn't work. You do need to look at the population growth. You have to look at the industries there. You have to understand also the income. Average income, is that increasing? What does it look like? And make some hypothesis there.
Yeah, I think the other thing to kind of round this story out, the one thing I've seen, again, owning this stuff is about half the tenants that I have in Madeira actually had jobs in Fresno. So it's a commute, it's commutable, right?
Yeah.
They wanted to live in Madeira. It's a slower moving, maybe they were whatever, but their jobs are in Fresno proper. Hanford, nobody was making that drive. They had local service jobs or whatnot. So very different game. So one I invest in now and one I won't touch with a 10-foot pole. So
Yeah.
very interesting stuff. One thing I have to say, if you're a real estate investor and you are not taking advantage of Hemlane, you're making a mistake. Again, what I want to say there is if you're looking to build a team, you're looking about different cities and locations, you should probably be contacting Hemlane to see what they offer as far as experts or service providers, because if Hemlane has service providers, it's big enough. If they look at you and go, not really, that might be a sign it's too small. So again, use these things at your disposal. Hemlane is one of those tools. Dana, where could they get a trial and see what's what?
Yeah, so Hemlane, we offer both leasing, so tenant placement and property management. And you can go to www.hemlane, HEMLANE.com, and just mention one rental at a time for 20% off your first year.
And let's not forget, she has a 30-day trial. If all of you are getting ready, doing the work, also practice being a landlord, practice tenant interactions. Stay tuned for video number 2. This one's going to get spicy. But yeah, do the trial. She has videos. She has a PDF. Go nuts. Practice. It's a lot of fun. Dana, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.